Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome to October 21st. It's Tim and Julie Harris. This is Real Estate Coaching Radio. This is the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. So we want to thank you for making that true. And we do have fun occasionally looking at the podcast charts. We look at our numbers and we are #1, #2, #3 in education in certain countries, most of which we've heard of the countries.
And some of them we haven't.
Right. So all of you across the country and across the world, we want to thank you sincerely for continuing to make this the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals. Now, why am I really laying into showing gratitude? Because it's called having good manners.
Yes, it is. In fact, that's our topic du jour, probably for the next couple of days. It's going to take to talk about all these manners.
Yes, so this is obviously a Julie topic. Longtime listeners, you guys can tell by what the topic is, whether it's something that Julie conceived of or if I conceived of. And this is clearly a Julie topic, but I think all of you guys will appreciate that. So Julie, when you told me you were going to have us present on manners, I wasn't quite sure if you were serious or not. So what inspired you to decide to focus on manners, and just what's the backstory behind this topic?
Well, quite a few, actually, both from personal business coaching clients, other things. And so, for example, we're not quite in post-COVID yet, but the lockdown, quarantine, homeschool, and Zoom world has messed with everybody's manners. This is clear. In fact, there's a lot of reports about this lately. And people don't know what's appropriate anymore. Coaching clients have struggled with the following topics: handshake, fist bump, or hug. What do? Open house etiquette, in-person or Zoom listing presentations, vaccine questions. Should you ask or shouldn't you? Is it taboo or isn't it? To mask or not to mask. All of these things are hot topics. And then in addition to that, I had a conversation with some teachers at school, and they're like, parents don't know how to behave anymore, a whole 15 months off from, quote, real school. And they'll do things like accuse each other's kids without having backstories. And nobody's really on good behavior right now. And maybe that's because people have spent too much time in lockdown, quarantine, and freaking out and watching the news and all this stuff.
Well, I've also noticed, just in life, as you and I have traveled and obviously in our own community, that a lot of people, the normal pattern to conversing with someone you're getting to know is absolutely never and should be never leading with politics.
No, for example, that's universally true, yes.
That's, you and I aren't so old that we know that that's kind of bad manners to sort of put somebody on their heels and be assumptive that they necessarily think that they, that you're on the same side of the, conversation as you guys get the point. And some of these topics or some of these things that you see people having normalized, it's because they themselves have, I think you're saying, bad manners, and I think that's probably true. Yeah. And it's been normalized because we're often caught in these echo chambers where everyone else around us has similar, notions about politics or about this stance on this social thing or that social thing.
And confirmation bias.
Right.
Too much media, stuff like that.
Exactly. And so you guys wonder sometimes why you don't click with somebody right away or why it feels like your world is getting smaller and smaller. Well, manners do tie into the fact that, and this is in our book, and you should definitely think about this, be Republicrats or just completely be neutral. Avoid topics that are going to be, in any way controversial, because as a real estate professional, that is not your job. It'd be similar. We use this as an example because I think it makes a great example. You go to the doctor to, Julie was just having a crown filled, right? Yes. Or a crown replaced in her teeth. And, that's where else you generally have crowns replaced in your teeth. Well, no, of course,
your head,
it could have been an actual crown, I suppose. It was time for you to get your new crown. Okay?
The ego adjusted.
Exactly. Right. Well, so you're, and had she walked in there and the doctor was hitting her up on whatever he just watched on MSNBC or Fox,
I would have been like, WTF, what is this?
Exactly.
I'm trying to get my tooth fixed.
And yet, in the real estate realms, because what you guys aren't realizing is, like, for example, that conversation with the dentist was what's, I guess, would be classically termed as a business to consumer conversation, a B2C conversation. And what you guys are used to having is C2C conversations, consumer to consumer conversations. In other words, your friends, right? and you're not thinking that of yourself as a business person, and business people who are dealing directly with consumers, dealing directly with the public, that's a B2C conversation where you're supposed to essentially not cross the threshold of talking about things, not have the bad manners of talking about things that might be even slightly controversial or offensive to the other person.
Not to mention irrelevant to what you're trying to do. Right?
Yeah.
This is also where agents get themselves in trouble by treating clients like they're, not clients, like we're just buddies, and being very assumptive, right? And kind of entitled in a way. Whenever you guys get really pissy about losing your client, it's usually related to something that we'll be covering over these next couple of podcasts.
Speak a little bit louder.
Okay, sorry.
Julie's.
I'm recovering from my sore throat here. So
yeah. So here's how it works in our family. Zoe gets something. She gives it to one of us, and then we give it to the other person.
And then I get it at the worst.
And Julie usually gets it the worst. So Julie was, they discovered she has strep throat yesterday, so now she's on medicine.
Hey,
so
you know what? I survived 3 weeks this time without getting it, but then it hit me.
Well, I wonder what Zoe's going to bring home for us today.
I know. Fortunately, tomorrow's off from school. So
some other form of Caribbean plague.
Seriously. And I know those of you who have kids understand. Well, so with a lot of research, we've compiled some new etiquette plus some old standbys, which people have gotten away from, which should help you lead by example as well as feel more comfortable with what's appropriate and what's not. So if you're looking for a theme here, it's good to keep Emily Post's principles of etiquette in mind as your North Star. She said, consideration, respect, and honesty.
You know what, Julie? I was just thinking this is a perfect time of year to have presented this content, because this is the time of year when people start to in many parts of the country, like where we're from, they're not necessarily spending as much time in their business.
Right.
And they start spending too much time on things like maybe watching the news.
Yeah.
But they're also going to be surrounded by family members, some of which are not going to have the same perspectives. Sure. And they're not going to necessarily follow Julie Harris and Emily Post's principles.
Or holiday parties,
exactly.
Or fill in the blank, all of these things. So I think I have like 30 or 40 points here. So warning, we'll go through these relatively quickly. And most of these, hopefully, you'll go, oh, yeah, I do that. Or, gosh, I've gotten away from that.
I did that. Or,
yep. Gosh, I went to a party and nobody did that, right? So let's start with the handshake. This is something everybody's dealing with right now. The handshake has been around for centuries. A widely held belief is that it originated to prove to somebody that a person was offering peace and not holding a hidden weapon. But hands can be germy. Diane Gottsman, a national etiquette expert and author of Modern Etiquette for Better Life, I recommend, also doesn't think the handshake will be a casualty of the pandemic, but said to take it slowly. Don't be the first to extend your hand, even if you're comfortable, instructed Gottsman, who lives in San Antonio. Watch the other person and allow them to extend their greeting first. So when in doubt, something's going to happen. Don't make it so awkward that you're waiting for each other. But when in doubt, use the fist bump because it's half handshake but not a hug. But read the other person's body language or just ask what they're comfortable with. We've been in situations where you're like, are we fist bumping? What are we doing? Right? It's okay to ask. But don't assume the hug. Because you might creep people out.
But here's the other thing I've noticed is a lot of people have given up on all forms of initial contact.
Yeah.
No handshake, no fist bump, no hug. They're just keeping this sort of bizarre distance from each other.
It's awkward,
and people are shouting.
Yeah.
These are just the types of things. And again, we talked about this during the pandemic. Well, when lockdown was going on in a lot of the country, certainly here, is we were talking about the fact that there was going to be the long-term psychological,
social
effects that came from this. And, we use the example of people that lived through the Great Depression. Julie's grandma. I remember when we were helping her grandparents move out of their house that they'd lived in forever. Her grandma had been storing like piles and piles of rubber bands and glass jars and newspaper. And you could now, why did she do that? She wasn't ever going to do anything with that. It's because during the Great Depression, those types of things weren't in existence. You couldn't get glass jars or rubber bands. And so the point is
in this case, toilet paper, right?
Right, exactly. How many of you are stockpiling toilet paper subconsciously? So this pandemic and the lockdowns, and it's continuing obviously in a lot of ways in varying degrees, is changing people's behavior, not just for Julie's grandparents, because that behavior then was passed to Julie's mom, who is obviously the child of those folks. And then Julie also has a tendency to hoard a little bit, not in a problematic way. She's giving me a really snarly look right now.
But talk about your car collection. But anyway.
But it's still true.
Well, sure. These things live on is the point.
Yeah.
And so this is our attempt to bring some civility back to the world before it gets out of control. So some of these may sound familiar, like number 2, say please, thank you, and you're welcome. Send thank you cards, not just a crappy email or text. Post on social media where appropriate for thank yous. Now, that point came directly from our doctor who saved somebody's butt the other day and felt like, he went above and beyond and didn't feel like anybody cared. Wasn't thanked.
Showing public recognition is a very powerful
It's
thing.
huge.
But, there's a counterpunch to that. Don't bitch online. Bitching online is
classless.
It's classless, but that stuff follows you forever.
Yeah, and if you have a real issue with somebody, have a discussion, because you know what the next point is? Communicate. Actually communicate. If something went sideways, you might not even be right about what it was in your perception until you talk about it. So communicate. Remember that lack of communication is the number one complaint of recently closed real estate clients. Use full sentences when you communicate.
A quick reminder, if you have not completed your 2022 business plan, we've got you covered. We're going to give you our real estate treasure map, which normally costs $20. All you've got to do is text the word Harris to 47372. Text the word Harris, Harris, to 47372. Go ahead and do that now. If you've not got your treasure map, and you have, you have to have a treasure map, and that's just your fill in the blank business and life plan. Go ahead and text the word Harris to 47372. And when you do, we'll text you back a link and you can download the treasure map. It's not a, wimpy business plan that you're just going to spend 5 minutes on. This is something that's designed to put you into action, to think, to complete with your family, complete with your partner. This is something that's supposed to be an all-encompassing business and life plan, and it's fill in the blank. We've made it easy for you. So just text the word Harris, Harris, to 47372, and go ahead and do that now.
Yes, so point number 3 was communicate. And one of the things I had in mind here is when you're dealing with your real estate clients and prospects, if they haven't heard from you or they've only had cryptic texts from you, do you think they typically go, I think they all can answer this, do they typically go negative or do they go positive? Do they think, oh, you must be taking care of me? Or, oh, you're ignoring me. I must have said something wrong. People fill in the blank generally with negative thoughts when there is lack of communication. So not just communicating, but please use full sentences and don't expect that everybody understands every emoji that you shoot off into your text. Okay, point number 4. Also very relevant to real estate professionals.
Julie, I think your second point is so valid. In a world where everyone does everything in 2 seconds and everything's digital, done with emojis, that is not communication. I don't even know what that is. I mean, when did adult humans start using smiley faces and frowny faces to express themselves?
Well, this is why people can't put a sentence together
Well,
anymore.
exactly. Exactly. And it's bizarre to me how that has become something that adult humans have normalized, is their willingness to give up to their ability to have real communication with other adult humans, and replacing with a smiley face or a frowny face. It's asinine. I hope you guys see it for what it is. This time of year, or really any time of year, what a great time to actually start writing handwritten notes to people showing how much you appreciate them. That stuff people do not throw out. They keep it forever. It is incredibly powerful. Show gratuitous praise to people. If you've done business with somebody and it was a great experience, do it for Julie and I. I mean, hell, we appreciate it too. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Give us a great review on Google My Business. Show overt praise for other people, because what that does is it puts you in a mental and emotional state of essentially being ego-free. You feel better about yourself when you're showing appreciation for somebody else. And if you want more appreciation and recognition in your life, the first thing to do is start showing more appreciation and recognition to other people, and then you'll attract it back to you, usually 5 or 6-fold.
That's right. Give what you intend to get back. So point number 4, show up on time. On time is late, early is on time. And if you're late, you lose. This is not just with real estate appointments, though that's very obvious. I'll never forget some of the appointments that you and I went on. And, we always tried to practice this and leave early and try and calculate your traffic time and all that stuff, and not park in their driveway, get there early. But I'll never forget. I don't know if you remember these.
By the way, everything she just said is part of our pre-listing routine. It's part of our coaching program.
Yes.
It's a checklist of every single thing you should do leading up to the listing appointment. All the little minute details that if you miss any of these little details, Julie said parking in their driveway. Let's say you get there before the other spouse makes it home, and then you block them out of being able to park in their driveway, and now they have to trudge through the snow to get to their front door.
And now they're pissed at you.
And now they're pissed at you, and you don't even know why. Now they know they have to go back out later to move their car so that you can leave. Don't park in their driveway. Those little tiny details make an enormous difference.
Like showing up on time. You remember we went to an appointment once together, and fortunately we were about 5 minutes early, and the first thing the seller did is he got out his legal pad and he had each agent name written down and exactly what time. Like everybody had a 5 o'clock appointment a few days in a row.
Yep.
And it would be like Bob Smith, 5:17, frowny face, or what, crossed out. And I thought at that moment, gosh, it's a good thing we showed up on time because this was a thing for him.
Well,
but don't just rely on the random person where it matters. Just make this your normal practice.
That's called being respectful. It's all the things we talk about in our book and our coaching program. It's how you dress. It's how you greet them when the door opens.
That's later.
It's okay. I'm sorry for stepping on
okay.
your points, but all these little things are called good manners, and people will appreciate it more than you can possibly imagine.
That's right. And sometimes they wouldn't even say, I didn't really hit it off with them, and maybe it started with you being late. They
Right.
wouldn't necessarily say it's because you didn't show up on time. They just didn't feel you. So show up on time. Number 5, tip service providers well. Leave your card with a thanks and a good tip. Sometimes a really good tip is if you're typically doing 15%, do 15% plus $1. People, especially in the service industry, definitely pay attention to
What
that.
Julie and I have done, and we've done this, as long as we could afford it, frankly, and that's been like we are maybe not able to afford it for, we've been married for 30 years. Maybe for the first 3 years of our marriage, we didn't do this. Mm-hmm. But when we have a really good experience, we'll double whatever the bill is. If the bill's $25, we'll give a $25 tip. And we when we sold real estate, we'd always leave our business card and we'd say, thank you, excellent job. We got so many stinking referrals directly and indirectly from that over the generations that you guys cannot, over the decades, you guys would not believe it. And
it really
is
does come
extraordinary.
back to you.
People will we just did that recently. Julie and I went out to celebrate. It was our anniversary or something.
Yeah.
And the bill was huge.
It was.
It was huge. But it was a fantastic meal.
It was.
And
I didn't feel like it. I felt like we got overwhelming value even though the bill was huge.
Right. But we ended up giving this waiter a several $100 tip.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, the bill was
Jordan.
huge. Right. Jordan. And he was beside himself.
Yes.
And he told everybody else in the restaurant. And we didn't do it to show off or act like we're Mr. and Mrs. Moneybags. We did it because we were celebrating. He had done a great job. He'd made the evening even more special. And the whole thing. And now if we sold real estate and we'd done that, don't you think that he would have been then feeling like almost obligated to send referrals to us had he stumbled across other people? Of course.
Yes, and that extra $10 or $20 means a lot more to that person probably than it does to you. It's not really taking any skin off your back. So good manners, tip service providers well. And if they didn't do a great job, talk to them. Don't go posting online.
Yeah, guys, look, do not post negative crap online because you do not know how that stuff is going to be searched when someone's researching you. And if a prospective seller is searching you and they see you complaining about a local restaurant that they happen to know the owner or like the restaurant and you're complaining about your extra mushy mashed potatoes.
Or their server was their kid.
Exactly. You have just burned that relationship with a person. Do not ever complain is the takeaway.
It's not worth it. Okay. So, number 6. This one is life-changing for many of our coaching clients. One of them said, I wrote, answer the phone. She would say, answer the damn phone, was what impacted her. Unless you're with a client or at a performance where your phone should be off, like a movie or a concert or whatever, answer the phone. I've had agents tell me that when they stopped sending everybody to voicemail and forgetting half the time, or their voicemail's full, or they didn't get around to it, or they called back too late, they just answered the phone, that their business went up 20 or 30% a year by just answering the phone. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have an elaborate conversation or answer their questions on the spot. You can say, you know what, I'm on my way to an appointment. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
So let's talk about that. Why don't they answer the phone? Because they can't. There's that.
Well,
but the real reason you guys don't answer the phone is because you don't know what to say to have an efficient, polite conversation. That's the problem. Because you have not yet accepted or realized that you are in the business to consumer business, and as such, you need to know what to say, how to say it, ask them the questions in the correct order, so that they do not perceive that they had a bad experience with you. So they perceive that you are caring and competent, and just like showing up on time. I can remember countless listings that we took. Julie and I focus on listings when we sold real estate. We focus on listings in our coaching business. But I can remember countless listings because we answered the damn phone.
They'll actually say that to you.
Right.
You were the only one that answered your phone. You can tell people are shocked because they'll be like, am I talking to a real person?
Okay, so using your example, how many times did we go on listing appointments where it was between us and another agent. And the other agent was, very productive, very successful.
Sure, competent.
And then we would frankly ask them, so what was your experience when you called them originally? Did they call you right back? Did they answer the phone?
Yeah.
How long did it take for them to, call you back for something incredibly important, which is helping you sell your house? We did not do that very often, but we did it often enough, especially with a couple of our main rivals, because we knew that they were notorious for not answering their phone, not returning calls, having assistants call back the next day, and then scheduling a listing appointment a week out. And then we'd simply say, well, how can you imagine how they're going to treat your prospective buyers that are calling about your house? I mean,
That's right. And a couple of them that, were super busy, big teams, we could say, did they even call you back themselves?
Right, exactly.
So-
And did they send a pre-listing pack? Did they actually show up on time?
Simple manners.
Right. All right. So next point, Mrs. Harris.
Okay, so answer the phone. And I wanted to say, even if you're not going to answer all their questions, answer the phone and say, I'm on the way to an appointment. Let me call you back at 6 o'clock. What's the best way to reach you? It's better than sending them to voicemail. Okay, point number 7, call people back as soon as possible. Even if it means you're telling them you'll call them later in the day or the evening, resist texting all the time for everything. Point number 8, when in Rome, ask the prospect what they're most comfortable with in person or Zoom. Just ask, especially with listing appointments and things of that nature. This has been a hot topic lately. There's different degrees of comfort in different parts of the country, and even in different neighborhoods and price ranges and all the rest. So, and I would say, especially with older people, you want to make sure that you're asking.
So I'm going to take a half step back. The reason that we're asking you guys to consider answering the phone and having conversations, I value texting. I text all the time. So does Julie. But the reason that we're asking you to avoid texting, not do it, but just put it as a second tier option in communication. And in first tier is obviously actually speaking with them and answering the phone. It's because everybody else is texting. And if you want to differentiate yourself, it's not how famous you've made yourself, your fancy brand or your TikTok videos. It's answering the phone. It's being the person that's actually going to be there when they have a real estate need. That in itself, if you're a brand new agent, you're looking for inspiration and motivation, how you can compete with the big dogs in town, we just told you.
Yes. A lot of this stuff is simple and powerful, but you got to do it. So we were talking about ask people what they're comfortable with in person or Zoom. You defer to what they're comfortable with, not what you're comfortable with. Number 9, say it, don't spray it. Stay at home if you're sick. Keep your kid at home if they're sick. Don't make awkward situations because you're coughing, you're sneezing, people have become, if you weren't a germaphobe before COVID.
Everybody is.
Everybody is now. Okay, point number 10, confirm all of your appointments. This is the polite and professional thing to do. That's easy. Maybe you're the only one of 3 appointments that bothered to confirm. That's a competitive advantage. Number 11, apologize when you screw up. Own it. Admit the problem and why it hurt someone, even if maybe you don't agree with it. Promise not to do it again, and then create new energy with new commitment to excellence for yourself and your clients. So admit to it, but don't hover on it. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, point number 12. Double refer, and I'll say what that means in a second, and take good care of your best contacts. We're talking about lenders, inspectors, service providers, other agents. When you double refer, let's say I'm referring a client to you and I give them your phone number, I'm also going to call you and give you the client's phone number.
Sure.
That way I'm closing the loop and making it more likely for the relationship to happen.
I had that happen today, actually. I had somebody, one person who was offering this particular service, another person I noticed needed this particular service. I just put them together and then I notified each of them separately that I was connecting them. And there was nothing in it for me. There was no hidden agenda. I was just trying to help 2 friends.
Manners.
But again, if we sold real estate, that would have been something that would immediately put put us on the radar of people that they'll choose to do business with when it comes time for them to hire a real estate agent.
It's the professional thing to do. Okay, so number 13, bust people and companies who suck, but do it professionally and ethically. Okay, this is a kind of a delicate thing because how you define that, how somebody screws up. I'm thinking, in terms of ethics or truly doing something wrong or unethical in a transaction. And that's something that I remember Rory told us we would occasionally come, should we turn this person into the division?
Rory's our first broker.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, if you don't, you're condoning it.
Yep, he did say that, and he was right. And so
Didn't happen very often, but when it does, you want to be responsible about it.
But did we ever, honestly? Do you remember any time when we actually had someone that we turned into the state division of real estate or anything like that? We never did.
I don't think so. I think there were some questions that we had in situations, but I that stuck with me, though, is that, if it really is an ethical or legal situation, if you don't say something, you kind of are.
But the reality of it is we very, very rarely ran across anybody that was that merited any
people
kind
are mostly pretty good about it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll tell you where you have your problems, those consumers.
That's true, too.
Yeah, you don't have your problems, generally speaking, with other real estate folks. You have your problems with the consumers. They're the ones with bad manners. They're the ones that don't know how to behave, especially with all the stress that's out there. And,
that's very true.
That's where the manners. You should copy these points, listeners, and you should give them to your prospective clients and
make them sign off on
and then tell them Julie's 21 points are basically, these are what you should be following if you expect to do business with you. Which, by the way, speaking of doing business, a lot of you are either on your pathway to joining EXP or you're actually looking for an EXP sponsor. Julie Harris and myself would like to formally apply for the job of being your sponsor at EXP Realty. When you're sponsored, you like our podcast, you read our books, you may be a coaching client. This is the time of year when a lot of you are thinking about how you can make a real proactive, positive movement forward in your business next year. Obviously, choosing a different broker, which, by the way, is a topic I sent to you.
Yes, I got it.
Choose. Is it time for you to leave your broker? Is it time to upgrade your broker? These are the types of things that people think about this time of year. Many of you are considering EXP Realty. Julie and I are formally applying for the job of being your sponsor at EXP. This is assuming, of course, you've not already committed to somebody, but if you haven't and you're choosing your sponsor at EXP Realty, please do text me directly at 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206, and we will have a conversation. You'll either talk with Julie or myself. We take the sponsorship opportunities at EXP very seriously, so if you're ready to join EXP, just text me directly at 512-758-0206. If, however, you're just on the pathway to learn more about EXP, we made that easy for you as well. You can just, on your own time frame, just text the letters EXP to 47372. Text the letters EXP to 47372, and we'll text you back a website and a whole bunch of videos and other content where you can get your research done that way. Perfect time of year to be doing this. Perfect time of year to be switching over to your broker. Generally speaking, and I've found this after having hundreds of conversations with you guys, EXP is a no-brainer. It doesn't matter where you sell, what your price range is. You're going to find that the advantages of being with EXP Realty far outweigh where you are now. And that's just, it's the evolution of the real estate industry. And there it is. So if you're interested
there's a reason that it's the fastest growing real estate company, I think, in the world now, isn't it?
Yeah, over 67,000 agents now.
Incredible.
And no, it is incredible.
Yes. So
almost 1,000 agents joined like last week.
Yes.
In a week.
Incredible. Okay. Point number 14, let people go in front of you in line or in traffic. Simple manners. If you have 90 things in your grocery cart and the old lady behind you is buying a gallon of milk, let her go in front of you. I've seen people stand there and there's people behind them that are buying one thing. So, simple manners. It doesn't take anything away from you.
But that we don't go to, we have somebody that helps us. I was going to say works for us, but truthfully, she helps us. She saves our bacon. And she'll go to the grocery store for us.
Yeah.
But when we would go to the grocery store back in Texas, we'd always do that. And furthermore, you and I bought people's groceries more than once.
Yes, absolutely.
We'd been in line, and you can see somebody's trying to figure out how to put the pennies and the nickels together to buy their groceries. And
they're like $5 away, so you give them the $5.
What's funny, too, is I can remember us doing that multiple times just like right before we moved around Christmas. And I remember having the emotional experience and I actually didn't want to be there. I wanted just to pay for their groceries
get out of there.
and get the hell out of there because I didn't want to be around for them feeling obligated and whatnot.
So you don't want to make them uncomfortable. You want to do it and bail.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe that's not the best way to do it because maybe we're being rude and not allowing them to say thank you. But I didn't do it to say thank you.
No,
to
help them out.
Right. And another good idea, and we used to, there's no Toys R Us here in Puerto Rico, is there?
You just read my mind. I don't think there is. But we can find an equivalent.
Well, the other thing this is a great idea for you guys to do.
Doing what you're talking about.
Yep, this is what we do every year. Julie and I would go. We did this for I don't even know how long. We'd go to the local Toys R Us, but we would choose a Toys R Us truthfully that was going to be in an area where people were more economically challenged. We walk into the Toys R Us, we go up to the service counter, we'd ask for like layaways, and we'd find out, Julie and I would decide ahead of time, we're going to pay off $5,000 for the layaways, or $1,000 or $500. It just depends where we were.
These were people's toy lists for their kids. And I'll never forget, you think of layaway. Well, why do you do layaway? Well, it must be, $500. You're going to pay it off over time. No, some of these layaways were like $30.
And some of the layaways had been layaway for a long damn time. And people have been paying like $2 a month for the layaway in anticipation of the kids' presents.
Exactly. It was amazing.
And we'd pay those off, and anonymously. We didn't ask for recognition. That's not how we roll. And I remember do you remember it was in Georgetown, I think. It was in Austin. We did exactly what we're talking about. We took Zoe with us. She was she probably wouldn't remember. She was probably too young. And we walked up, and it was a significant amount of money. Yeah. And the layaway lady, we kept her busy for like 2 hours.
Yeah, a couple hours.
And she was, and we told her that we don't want, it was specific. We were specific. We wanted her to pay off the layaways using our money for the gifts that were for littler kids mostly.
Mostly toys and things like that. Not like big screen TVs for a teenager or something. Those were just, our feelings. But there's a lot of stories about, paying for the person behind you in the Starbucks checkout line, the car line. And I think there's like some records. Once somebody starts it, the next person pays for the person behind it. And I think the record is like 200 cars deep or something.
Do you remember?
So it's kind of fun.
Do you remember we were going to, and this was in Austin, it was some freaking South by Southwest huge human palooza type thing where there's like 16 trillion people.
Obviously pre-COVID.
And there was somebody who let us into a parking lot, this big, huge field parking lot. And I think I'd been trying to get in. This guy let me in. We got in before him, and we paid for his parking. Yeah. And this parking lot was flipping massive.
Yes.
And we parked like way the hell out in the corner because I like to park where nobody else is parked.
Yep.
And that guy waited for us to come around and walk out the one way in, one way out into this huge field parking lot to thank us.
I know. It doesn't take much to make somebody's day.
And it was like $20.
I know. It's amazing how far it goes. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 more points, and then we will turn this into a 2-part show. Okay, so point number 15 is easy. Bust your own dishes at casual restaurants. Don't leave a mess. That person is already working their tail off. And I would say especially now where a lot of restaurants are short-staffed and you've got one person that's like cleaning the tables and they're also making the coffee. So bust your own tables when it's appropriate.
And that's a huge problem. When we were driving around the country, you guys followed us with our U.S. tour that we did over, what was it, July and August, basically. We would go to, there were no restaurants that were fully staffed. And every single one of them, especially in the small towns, the little signs that saying, you just, suck it up, Buttercup. We're just going to be slow. It is what it is. We appreciate your patience.
We're doing the best we can.
And, why is there, all these restaurants that can't find their normal hourly employees? Probably has something to do with the fact they're being paid to stay at home. But I'm not being political.
Go there.
But the moral of the story is in those situations where you're like, it's easy to be frustrated, especially when you're hungry. But if you're going to a place on a regular basis, Julie always brings up Starbucks because everybody knows what that is. But even your little local restaurant and whatnot, bust your own damn dishes. Don't just leave you just spent your $7 at wherever it was that you normally go. And you're going to leave a mess. Clean up your shit and take it up and actually put your dishes in the bin where the bus person would normally put the dishes. That makes a huge difference. And if you go back there on a regular basis, you don't think those people are going to remember you? Of course they are. They're not just going to remember you. They're going to adore you. They're not just going to adore you. They're going to know your name, what you do, and they're going to start, guess what, sending you referrals. And even if they never do, it's the right thing to do. It's manners.
Yes. And, you're also setting an example for everybody else sitting at the restaurant that they're not going to torture that person with their messes, too.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. Having worked at a restaurant when I was in high school and having been a busboy, from that perspective of basically being the cleanup crew, the number of people, the people that would look at you when they spoke to you versus would just speak to you like you were just something in the air that was annoying them like a fly.
Right.
That was huge. So when you're at a restaurant, when somebody puts something down for you or picks something up, always look at them and say thank you.
Yes.
That makes such a big difference to the person that's actually working there because you acknowledge them. You just, for no effort on your part, gave them a tiny, tiny little spark of recognition. They remember, you could have just made their day. You could have just changed the entire trajectory of their lives.
Yeah, the table before you probably, maybe didn't treat them so well. And they're already working a fairly low-wage job, and they probably feel like they're in a thankless situation, and then you're kind to them.
Yep.
and you turned it around. Okay, so one more and then we need to wrap. All right, point number 16. This is especially for listing appointments and sometimes showing appointments. Take your shoes off if it's a no-shoes house. Take a look at their feet. If they have at their front door all of their shoes lined up in a neat row and they have white carpet or sparkling,
or hardwood, doesn't matter.
Hardwood or whatever, be respectful. The fastest way to lose a listing appointment is to dirty up their house.
Okay, let's give you an enhancement on that point. Again, basic stuff. So you're now on the buyer side. You bring somebody through a house everywhere. Oh, by the way, there was a report that came out today. This is the hottest year ever for home sales. Ever.
That's amazing.
Like, since people moved out of freaking caves and, grass huts.
Yeah, well, so listeners, you have no excuse but to be exceeding your goals.
So you walk into a house with a buyer. There's 10 other buyers that came through before you. 10 other will come after. The seller most certainly is watching you through their ring cams.
This is a key point.
They're watching you as you walk through the house. They're not just watching you. They're listening to you. So we just put one of those ring cams in the front of our house. And I was waiting for Zoe to get home, and I was basically in the house on my cell phone. And then as soon as she walked up to the front door, and Julia just brought her home from school, I started making monster noises, and it was hilarious watching her trying to figure out what that was. And all of a sudden, I heard "Dada!"
But she now thinks that you're magic, and you can see her anywhere.
Right, but she didn't know the Ring doorbell had the ability to be seen and obviously have the voice carried. But back to real estate.
Yes.
So as you're walking around somebody's house, if you say anything bad, they're listening and they're watching you. If you walk into their house, and you should tell your clients to keep their mouths shut and say nothing other than nice, respectful things. And when you walk into their house, and you take your shoes off, and if nobody else took their shoes off, even if there was no sign saying take your damn shoes off, do it, because when that seller got their 10 offers and they remember you were the person that took the shoes off, you were the ones that were not walking through the house and acting like a slob.
Yeah.
They're going to take your offer, assuming all the other terms and conditions make sense. But I'll go as far as to say, oftentimes, believe it or not, a seller will take an offer from somebody for reasons other than the highest price.
Yes.
And this could just very well be the little thing that made it so your offer was the one that was accepted over the other one because you were respectful and you had
manners.
All right, there you guys go.
I knew we'd have fun with this one.
All right, well, it's a good topic after all.
It's amazing that there's so many, but these are just, a lot of micro points that when you add it up, you're being a better human, you're setting a better example, you are creating competitive advantages for yourself, you're attracting people to you and expanding your center of influence. So all of these things put together, I think, really can advance how you're doing and how you're feeling about things.
That's right. So listen, guys, we're going to pick up tomorrow where we left off today. In the meantime, thank you, as always, for continuing to make this the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. We're downloaded in over 61 different countries. We have something around 20 million downloads, so it's pretty incredible. So again, thank you for all your support. Thank you for continuing to support Harris Rules. We get the reports from BookScan telling us how many books you guys bought in the last 30 days. It's pretty amazing. The actual sales are picking up, which is incredible considering it basically came out 2 years ago. In the interim, if you guys need us for anything, any suggestions on shows, topic ideas, text me directly at 512-758-0206. Have a fantastic day.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.